Hi, thank you so much for coming back and watching another one of my videos. My name is Khandy. Today we have a special guest, Miss MaryKate. We will be discussing a very important, not so happy topic today, but it is very important for adoptive families, hopeful adoptive families to educate themselves on. We're going to be talking about adoption scamming today. And unfortunately, Miss MaryKate has dealt with that. And I feel she is a great person to educate us on this topic. So I'm going to have MaryKate introduce herself and tell us a little bit about her family. MaryKate.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much, Khandy, for having me on your channel. As you know, I have been a big fan of you. You're like famous in my home.
Thank you.
So my husband and I started our adoption journey in March of 2021. So only,
Few months.
short time. We have a 6-year-old biological daughter. And we started our journey due to, fertility issues, miscarriages. Adoption was, a natural next step for us. So we were so excited to get on this journey. We're still very excited. And we honestly did not know much about the adoption world to begin with, let alone the scamming side. So, which is like a whole nother exciting part of this journey.
Gotcha. So you were brand new pretty much when this happened. Okay. So before I ask my next question, did you sign with a professional?
Yes. So we were with a agency.
Okay.
They are not a full service agency. They're basically like a consulting agency. So we are signed on with them, and then we have the agency that we worked on with our home study. So we've been fully, home study approved through a separate agency. So technically we're working with 2 different agencies.
Did anybody give you any type of heads up or warning about scammers or scamming?
No.
That's where I was going with that. Okay.
No.
We didn't get that either. But I didn't know if that was like a new thing, because I feel like scamming is so prevalent. Like, why don't professionals talk about it? Okay. So for our viewers who don't know who Gabby is, can you please explain?
So Gabby is sort of infamous now for scamming thousands of families at this point. I first learned about Gabby actually a couple months ago when we were first starting in the adoption world. I did see her on Dr. Phil. She was on an episode of Dr. Phil where he invited a family who had been scammed by Gabby, a similar situation to us actually. And you could tell right away that obviously she has some social issues, some mental issues. She's clearly not in her right frame of mind when she does this. So we did learn about her then, but I had naively thought that once she was on Dr. Phil, he had supposedly sent her away to like a mental health facility so that she could get the help that she needed. I'm not sure if she ever went, but I had just assumed that because they were addressing this with her, she was like caught basically, and that was it. It just so happened that I saw that on YouTube. Actually, it was just a YouTube video of her Dr. Phil interview. So a couple months later, it happened to us. So she targets families, new families. It seems like she targets very new families, people who have just established a profile. We had just created a pear tree profile as an added sort of layer of exposure for us to get out there to birth moms. And that is how she found us, through Pear Tree and our Instagram page. So of course your agency is encouraging you to really push social media and really get out there. But it is a double-edged sword in the fact that you now become more vulnerable to potential scammers. So that's the angle that Gabby goes. She finds new profiles that have just been created, and she reaches out as a typical birth mom would. I received a text message from her. I don't know if you want me to go into the whole story.
Hold on, I have another. Besides Gabby, did you know that there were other adoption scammers out there, and how common it was?
No, not at all. And in that respect, I truly was very naive to the whole world of adoption scamming. That's sort of not true. I knew that there were people who would scam for money, which totally makes sense to me. It's not right, obviously, but it makes more sense that you're scamming to get people's money. But Gabby is a scammer who does not ask for money, does not mention money. It's simply an emotional aspect that she really is trying to make friends with people. This is how she gets attention. This is how she feels wanted and needed. And it's total emotional, psychological scamming.
Okay. How many scammers, and we're going to get back to Gabby, how many scammers would you say, even in like a group post setting, have you said that you've encountered so far?
Before Gabby, we had encountered one scammer who was scamming for money. She was messaging me on one of the adoption Facebook pages, of which there are many, as you know. So she was messaging me on Facebook. I totally thought she was legit. This was like probably a month after we were home study approved. And I was so excited. I was like,
oh I know who you're talking about. I saw you in the comments.
Yeah, yes. Exactly. And you're like, girl, oh, but yeah, and obviously as soon as she started saying like, I need money, I can't support my children that I already have, or feed myself or my child, like your heart just pours out for these people because, and at that point, I didn't know what a typical birth mother situation would be. That would be totally legitimate in my eyes. I don't know. So luckily I reached out to the agency that we're working with, and they said, if she's asking for money, it has to go through a lawyer. And 99.9999% of times, if she's asking for money before you're talking about anything else, she's scamming. She's scamming you. So that was like, it was tough because it was my first ever interaction with a birth mother ever. Well, a birth mother. But I got over it like pretty quickly. I'm like, yeah, like there's shitty people out there. It sucks, but they're really like, you know, I don't know if I'm allowed to curse on YouTube.
No.
There's horrible people out there who are taking advantage of people who are vulnerable and, you know, just hopeful to bring that baby home. And it's really unfortunate.
It is. It is. So if you don't mind telling us what happened with Gabby.
Yeah. So it was the Sunday before Labor Day. And she had texted me. It was really late at night. It was like 11 p.m. And she's like, sorry for the late text. I saw your Pear Tree profile and I saw your Instagram and I'm really interested in your family. I am, I think she was like 15 or 16 and I had my baby 2 weeks ago. Would you consider a baby that was already born? And I was like, yeah, like obviously we will take any baby to bring into our home and love, like 2 weeks old, newborn, not born yet, like, you know, we won't discriminate. So we had just been going back and forth. I thought it was a totally legitimate situation. She did not mention money. She did not mention needing support. She only mentioned the fact that she's young and that she can't take care of this baby on her own. She wants to go back to high school. And I thought nothing of it. She said that her mom was supportive of her adoption plan. Her boyfriend was supportive of her adoption plan. Everybody was on board. She just really needed to place this baby for adoption because she could not handle it like mentally and emotionally because she was so young. So we went back and forth like all night that night. I mean, I was up until like 5 a.m. texting back and forth with her.
What was the name she was using?
Nevaeh.
Very common Gabby name.
Yeah, yes. Heaven spelled backwards. And I'm learning now that Gabby does have
her names, her favorite names.
Yeah. And she's typically a teen mom. So the next morning she was like, do you want to talk on the phone? And I was like, yeah. At that point I was like, you know what, I really need to contact the agency that we're working with to find out, like, is this legit? I didn't want to get too far into it without, you know, taking the proper steps to make sure it was a legitimate thing. So I reached out to the first agency, Agency A, that we are working with. And they were closed because it was Labor Day. So they were closed for adoptive parent situations. They have 24-hour support for birth mothers, but they don't have that sort of support for adoptive parents. So unfortunately, I didn't hear back from them for another 24 hours. So I reached out to the agency who we had been working on our home study with. So she was technically our social worker, our caseworker. So I reached out to them. They were incredibly responsive, helped out through talking with Gabby, or Nevaeh as I thought, told us things to say, think questions to ask. And then she even called her and had a full conversation with her. And then the phone calls started. And this I've learned is another very common Gabby situation, like common characteristic with Gabby situations. Once you talk to her, she keeps calling you and calling you and calling you. And I didn't think anything of it at that time because I'm like, all right, this
make you get more excited, like this is
yeah,
happening. Okay.
yeah. And she
I just
clearly
want you to be as fluid and as open, because I know there are new parents watching, and it's like I need for them to understand the signs.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I was incredibly excited. I was like calling my mom, like, oh my gosh, we got matched with this baby. She's sending me pictures of her, of the baby being born, just coming out of the birth canal, of the baby being weighed, of the baby at her first doctor's appointment, being checked by the nurse with the stethoscope, putting her on the scale. All of these pictures that you would think are totally legitimate. It's the same baby in every picture. I did Google like reverse searches with the pictures to make sure they weren't stock images. Like I'm thinking I'm taking all these proper steps to make sure this was a legitimate situation. And I was so excited, but I was still trying not to be like overly excited because I always have that in the back of my mind, especially going through infertility, like fertility treatments and having all these miscarriages. You never let yourself get to the point where you're like,
and then done that, you're speaking to the choir, girl.
Yeah. So there was always something that was like holding me back from being so excited. But anyway, I was excited. We were both excited. And then it started to turn after our social worker had called her she called our social worker later that night. So this is Labor Day evening. And she was saying, I'm starting to feel unsafe caring for the baby. I really need them to come out here as soon as possible and get the baby because I really feel unsafe. So the social worker worked on like a 12-hour plan with her to make sure that she wasn't alone at any time during that period. Making sure that her mom was going to be home, her boyfriend was going to be there, someone was going to be there with her to make sure that she wasn't going to hurt herself or hurt the baby, God forbid. And that was fine. She didn't want to call Child Protective Services because she knew that and this may have not been the right thing to do. I'm not really sure what the process is supposed to be, but she didn't want to call Child Protective Services and have them intervene. It would have caused, I guess, more of a wait time with the adoption, would have maybe even made it impossible. I don't know. She didn't want that. I didn't want that. So they came up with some safety plan. And then my social worker called us back and said, can you get flights out there as soon as possible? Once you land, we'll deal with the legal stuff. We have a lawyer on it who lives, and apparently she lived in Iowa. We have our Iowa attorney on it. She's getting all the paperwork ready. As soon as you get off the plane, you're going to meet her and sign all the paperwork and meet them to get the baby. So I was like, oh my God, like this is actually happening. Like, holy crap.
Back.
Like 48 hours, we're like putting the wheels in motion. And at that point, the next day was my daughter's first day of school. So she was starting first grade. And I was like, I was so upset that I was going to miss her first day of school, but I'm like, obviously it's worth it. We're bringing a baby home. She's so excited. And I did not plan on telling her because she's 6 and I didn't want to get her hopes up, but we had to at that point. We were leaving so quick and she was having her first day of school the next day and I felt awful. So I had to explain to her why mommy and daddy were leaving so quickly. We got flights out to Iowa in the morning. I told her that we might be bringing a baby home. We're going to go and see if we can adopt this baby. And I was showing her pictures of her. And of course, she fell in love instantly. So off we go. My whole family like dropped everything to come over and help us. My mom came over and stayed with my daughter. My cousin took my dogs. Like, it was like all the wheels were in motion. Everybody dropped everything to come and help. We flew out the very next morning. We had like a 7 a.m. flight to Iowa from Philadelphia. We had been texting with Nevaeh the night before up until like 11 o'clock when we fell asleep, and we're like, all right, we'll see you in the morning. Like, we had plans to meet at this park, a neutral spot where it wasn't, she didn't really want to have anybody at her house, the whole thing. So the next morning I text her and I say, we're leaving for the airport. She doesn't respond. I reach out to our social worker. I said, have you heard from her? It's kind of weird that she hasn't responded. And she's like, no, I haven't heard from her, but I'm going to try to call her. I'll update you. Text me before you get on the plane and we'll talk. Texted her before we got on the plane. She said, I still haven't heard from her, but this is pretty common. Like, maybe she's sleeping. She sounded super tired. We'll check in when you land. So we land in Iowa. No, I'm sorry. We flew into Missouri because whatever, we couldn't get flights into Iowa. We flew into Missouri. We were going to take a 4-hour drive to Iowa. We land in Missouri. I'm like in the middle of nowhere. Get off the plane and I check in with her, and she said, our social worker said, Nevaeh's phone is now turned off. And my heart like sunk into my butt. Like, I was like, what is happening? I'm like running through the Kansas City airport, like a chicken with my head cut off, not knowing what the hell am I doing? Should I be turning around and getting on a plane right now? Like, what is happening? And she said, sometimes it's normal for birth moms to get their phones turned off if they don't have the funds to, sometimes they like pay by the minute phones or whatever. So I was like, well, should we start driving there? Like, I had the address at this point. Should we just go there? So she's like, yeah, start heading there and I'll call you as soon as I hear anything. Meanwhile, I guess they had their lawyer reach out. The lawyer that was in Iowa reached out, and somehow, I don't know how this came about, they found the real Nevaeh, who is a 15-year-old who did have a baby 2 weeks ago, was not placing her baby for adoption. They found her on Facebook, I guess.
But any type of they probably have a social media manager that works in their firm.
Yeah,
and they're able to
I
find
think that's exactly what they did.
With the reverse image search.
Yeah. So she was getting these pictures from her Facebook and her mom's, like the grandmom's Facebook. Anyway, so we're about 45 minutes from the Kansas City airport at that point. We had gotten a rental car. We're on our way to the hotel that's like in Iowa. A 4-hour drive. We're 45 minutes into it, and the social worker calls and she was like, I am so sorry to tell you this, but this is all a scam. And I was like on a highway driving and I'm like, what? And she's like, I don't know if you've ever heard of Gabby Watson, but we found out that has been her the whole time. And I screamed because I had heard of Gabby Watson, and I was like, I couldn't believe that I couldn't identify her very distinct voice in all of the times that I talked to this girl. And of course, I started blaming myself because there were all these red flags that you ignore because you're so hopeful and you're so excited. So I did a lot of like self-blame that day. So we turned around, heading back to the airport. You know what? I can't get back on a plane right now. My head is like literally fried. So we went to Kansas City and got like a suite at the Sheraton or something like that. I'm like, we're gonna go have some drinks and we're gonna go get some dinner.
Listen, a disruption will make you blow money that you don't have.
Oh,
we've been there, done that.
And then we booked first class flights home because I'm like, you know what? I can't do this.
A disruption is the best way for you to blow money that you don't have, because it's like you can't even think straight. And I completely understand what you just said. You blame yourself because there's one person, and I've said this in my home study video, there's one person that takes the lead role in the adoption journey.
Yes.
Obviously it's you. Obviously it's me. Kenny has zero to do with any of this stuff. So when it goes bad, I feel like it falls on me.
100%.
You know, he doesn't
100%.
blame me for anything, nor is he yelling or is he upset with me.
No.
It's more for the situation, but the blame that I feel, it's like
victim shaming.
Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah. I should have known better. I should have known better. I should have known better. I should have known better.
And I knew, like, when I talked to her on the phone, of course, like, hindsight is 2020, right? You start replaying these things in your head and you're like, well, that doesn't really make sense. Like, but you don't notice that stuff when you're going through it because you're so excited and you're like, your eyes on the prize and you're like, you have tunnel vision because you just want to bring that baby home. And it's horrible that people do this. Gabby is clearly a very challenged. She's a very challenged individual. She's very sick. She's a sick individual who needs help. And there's nothing I can do to stop her. There's nothing anybody can do to stop her. And that, I think, is the biggest challenge for hopeful adoptive families. There needs to be more education on adoption scam in general, and specifically her scams, because I mean, they're heartbreaking. They're heartbreaking.
Is there anything you think that you could have done differently or that you should have done differently?
I will now ask, no matter how like insensitive it may seem, I need to have like ID of a person to make sure you're that person, or let my agency or attorney do that. Which in hindsight, it really was like the perfect storm of a situation. It was Labor Day. The lawyers weren't in the office. My agency wasn't in the office. I was dealing with the social worker who never does this. And it was just the perfect storm. And she knows exactly what to say to get you.
Why wasn't she able to video chat?
That's the thing. She wanted us to FaceTime her. And as soon as we said, all right, we're going to set up this FaceTime call, that's when it started to turn. That's when she told our social worker that she feels unsafe with the baby. And that's when things escalated. So like, you need to come now. We had plans to go out the next week. And we're going to like FaceTime you every day and make sure that, you know, you're safe with the baby. As soon as we had plans to FaceTime, things escalated.
Always FaceTime, always video chat.
Yeah, and honestly, like, I'm taking this as a huge learning experience, because what else can you do? Like, after it happened, my husband and I were both like, we thought adoption was going to be an easier path than going through fertility and loss, fertility treatments and all this loss. But it's turning out to be just as challenging, and I know it's going to be worth it for us.
The road to parenthood is just
it's not easy.
Not in your hands. And that's the thing. It's like,
and we were feeling really down about the whole situation. Like, should we even stick with this? Should we even continue on this journey? And I'm like, no, I am not letting this person determine our path of our adoption journey. This is not how it's going to end. And I will not let her do that to us. So we have to stay positive. We have to stay on this journey. And we're just trying to stay positive as much as we can. And I'm trying to take every opportunity I can to help educate other people, which is why this is wonderful. I had a check-in with our agency A, that we're working with, that was closed on Labor Day, and expressed some frustrations with them. Like, you really do need to have support on holidays because I feel like adoptive families need just as much support as a birth mother does, because we're all in this blindly and have no idea what to do. And you need to be providing high level, in-depth actually, education about adoption scams. And at the very least, encourage all the families to follow the Ending Adoption Scams Facebook page. I had no idea what that was until, I don't know who told me, if it was you. I don't know. It was you. was. But that is like so helpful because people constantly post like, this is a Gabby situation, like look out for this name. And people are constantly messaging you and texting adoptive families with situations. And it's good to just vet that through the Adoption Scams Facebook page.
Mhm. Mhm. So how has this situation changed you?
I think that it's made me more cautious, not in a bad way. It's helping me to be more cautious. Like I should have been more cautious in the beginning, but you just don't know. There's not a book that's like, here's everything you need to know, and this is what you need to do, and this is how you're gonna get your baby. Every journey is different, and ours has been like not unlike anybody else's, but just we've had to face this enormous, I mean, it feels like a loss, honestly. I mean, it was a financial loss and an emotional loss. So it's definitely, it's given me like a little bit of armor to face these situations head on. And I don't think that that's a bad thing. I think that it'll make our successful adoption even more, exciting and worth it in the end.
Mm-hmm. It will. It will. It will. Really quick before I get to the last question, what did Agency A say when you recommended that they provide more education on adoption scamming to their families?
Oh yeah, really your social worker is supposed to provide that information, but I'll give it to my supervisor.
Okay. Okay.
Not help.
Okay. Okay. So just pass the ball on. Okay.
Right.
All right. So what advice would you give to new hopeful adoptive parents or just hopeful adoptive parents in general? You've been in this for quite some time now.
Yeah.
And not even, I mean, as far as scamming, but just in general, just all the journey and the ups and downs and remaining positive, remaining consistent, being diligent with yourself. Like, what would you tell them?
I think, I think the number one lesson is to follow that ending adoption scam Facebook page. Like my number one lesson, and to like just at least watch the Gabby Watson, Dr. Phil segment, because her voice is pretty, you can't forget it, even though I did. But my advice really is to just stay the course. I know that's way easier said than done, especially when you're going through this, but not to let things like scammers affect your mental state when you're going through this journey. And honestly, I have a therapist that I see every 2 weeks, and that is incredibly helpful to me because it's just useful to have somebody who is like a neutral person to talk through this stuff.
Yeah.
And because sometimes it's like too emotional to talk with your spouse or your partner. And sometimes you're not on the same page, and that's okay too. Because there were times when he wanted to like, I'm done. And I'm like, but I feel like I'm carrying the weight of both of us now, and that's not great for me. So I'm saying like a lot of different things, but to just try to stay the course and keep your mental health in check. And if you need to take breaks, take breaks.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Amen to that one. People think all the time that, whenever I stop posting videos or I don't post on social media, like, oh my God, they have a baby at home.
Yeah.
It's like, first of all, you'll never know when the baby's home because I'm not going to announce it. You know what I mean? Like I announced our daughter probably a year and a half after we finalized.
Yeah.
And, but I naturally don't like social media. It takes a lot for me to do that. And to me, I try to make sure that a lot of things that are on my feed are positive things, but sometimes I feel like social media can be very toxic.
Yeah.
And when you're in this journey, or when you're just going through certain things, it's like you need to be so careful of what you put into your mind.
Yeah.
Because it can really shift your perspective on things, or
Totally.
it can bring so many toxic influences in. And it's like, I don't need that. So it's like, I try to stay off of social media. And it's like, the last thing that I need is to go down that rabbit hole.
Yeah.
And so taking a break, I say this to people all the time. Sometimes you just need to take a break, and it's okay. You're not missing anything. Trust me when I tell you, you're not missing anything, because you have to take care of your home. Like you said, you have to take care of your mental health. You have to take care of your spouse, because whether this works out or not, that spouse, you gotta make sure
still
that's
up.
okay.
Yeah,
Yes.
we're still up.
You have to make sure that that's okay. You still have your daughter at home. I still have my daughter here. I don't ever want her to feel like this is coming before her.
Exactly.
You know, it's like,
and I feel like that is a big struggle for me. And I still, like, I can say that, don't try not to let it affect, but after that, it really, like, I was so like, I really need to get all this stuff lined up, and I need to, like, you know, you're thinking about all these different things you need to do, when in reality, what you're doing is not going to affect the outcome like as much as you wanted to. It's just, when it's your time, it's your time. I think that's how it has to be. And I have to tell myself that constantly. And you actually were very helpful for me after this whole thing. We talked on the phone for a while, and I was laying in a bed in Kansas City, like, what the F am I doing here with my life? And you were like, it's not your baby. It's not your baby.
And I tell you about all of our disruptions, and I was just like, yeah, it happens. It happens to all of us.
It's not my baby. And having, like, somebody else who has gone through it or is just positive, having that influence is super helpful.
No. Yeah. You're welcome. I mean, it's nice. This is what I mean about creating a village of people that can walk the same path as you.
Yeah.
I have my same girlfriends from 20, 30 years ago, you know, some 35 years ago, but they don't get this part.
They don't get this, no.
They'll never understand this part. But I have a village that I've created with people that I've met in the last year and a half. And they get it more than I can tell you. They've walked it. They've cried these same tears that I've cried.
Yeah. I've actually connected with so many moms on the Ending Adoption Scams page. Some who live in Philadelphia, who are, like, super local, who I would love to meet in person. And it's just nice to talk to other people who know what you're going through and can relate 100%.
Yeah.
So that's another thing I would recommend, is to, like, join a support group. There's support groups on Facebook. Just reach out. I'm happy to talk to anybody.
Yeah.
That's all you can do. I have taken a little bit of a social media break for my adoption stuff since this happened, because I'm like, I just don't even know what to post at this point. Quite frankly, I'm like, I don't want any other scammers coming at me. So
yeah, you're cautious. You're being cautious. But you know what? Adoption sometimes can be hard. And then it can be beautiful.
Yes. I'm hoping to get to that beautiful part, like, so soon.
It's coming.
It'll happen in its own time.
It's coming. And when it comes, it's going to come so fast. You're going to forget about all of this. This interview, you're going to be like, what? Oh my gosh. Yeah, that's exactly how it happens. That's exactly how it happens. Yeah, that's exactly how it happens. But my point of doing this interview was to bring awareness to this world of scamming that's out there. And I know that we talk about it, but it's like to see an individual face and to put a name and to put a voice to it and to hear, like, a real story that's not in text, that we can hear a voice that's talking about it and hear how fast it happened, you know, an 11 p.m. text, the next day you're on a plane.
Mhm.
And it's like, this is not real. She missed her daughter's first day of first grade.
And that was one of the hardest parts, I think, is missing her first day of school. And the fact that the night before we got on our flight, Gabby was like, "Are you sure it's okay that you're missing your daughter's first day of school? Like, I feel so bad." And that was just like a knife in the heart. Like, oh,
it's a big deal. It's a big deal.
Really hard. It was harder for me than I thought it would be.
Yeah.
But we replayed her first day of school when we got back. So
yeah.
First days of school.
I missed my kindergarten graduation because I had the chicken pox, and my parents did the whole thing all over again. All over. We did the cap and gown and everything. And I had calamine lotion all over me. We replayed.
And that's what like my daughter will not probably remember her first day of first grade. So
yeah, I don't remember mine. I mean, but you know,
see pictures, you know.
Yeah. But I mean, you know, it's good to share other people's experience. You know, on my channel, I like to talk about my firsthand experience with things. And I always said that I wanted to have interviews with people, and having interviews with people sharing their firsthand experience with things and things that I feel like are important. I knew that I had to have you on. I mean, the minute that you texted me that this morning, remember I was running out and I was like, I have to call you. I was like, I'll call you in like 5 minutes. I'm running out for an appointment.
I think you were feeding your ducks.
Yeah, no. We had to go to an appointment. We had just come in from feeding the ducks. And I was reading the text and I was like, what? What did she just say? And I was like, I'll call you in 5 minutes. I could not believe it. It was like my heart was breaking. So, I mean,
friends of mine who are like, if I didn't know you, I would think you made this up. Like, it's wild. I'm like, I know.
Again, you have to be in this world. Again, you have to be in this world to understand. So, I mean, you know, I told you, my husband and I, we got on a plane with less than 24-hour notice, and we were getting in the rental car at the airport, and we got a call from the attorney. She changed her mind. We were like, well, I said, find me something to eat because I'm starving. That was literally my response. Like, we're already here.
I know. Nothing. What are you going to do? And a lot of this is truly the faith. You know, sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't.
Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't, but you learn every single time it happens. Every single time it happens, you learn something new.
Exactly. And that's what I'm trying to chalk this up to, is like a huge learning experience for me, for my husband, and for everybody we're sharing our story with, because it can only help at this point.
You learn something new every time, and that's what it's about. It's about learning, it's about growing, it's about improving, and it's just it's a part of your journey.
Yeah.
It's literally a part of your journey.
Yeah.
So thank you.
And then my cousin, I'll just add my cousin, because we had a financial loss, obviously. It wasn't a ton of money, but when you're trying to fundraise for your adoption, it was like $3,000. And the week we got back, my cousin did like this whole raffle basket with lottery tickets to help us recoup the money, which was amazing. So, I mean, you talk about your village. It's really, really does take a village to become a parent in any way, I think.
Oh man. We know. We know. It's trivial. But again, thank you so much for hopping on. I know that I know that this was hard for you. I know it was hard for your husband. But educating others on it is so important.
Yeah.
So important. So everyone out there, please be mindful. If you're speaking to someone and they seem extremely excited, they have a lot of photos, if they won't video chat with you, if they don't want to speak to the professional that you're working with, if every photo on their profile looks like a stock photo, if it's a perfect photo, there's just certain things to me that seem like red flags.
Yeah.
Get your professional involved as soon as possible. But join the adoption scam page, like MaryKate recommended. Ton of information on there, a ton of names on there. Scammers, this is just what they do. It's the same ones all the time. Most of them have me blocked. It's okay, whatever.
Like, I'm not dealing with Khandy. No
No,
way.
it's true.
She knows too much.
Yeah, it's true. But just be careful, be careful, be
Yeah.
careful, be careful, be careful, be careful. I cannot tell you enough. Be careful. And as always, do your research, you know, with the professionals that you sign with, and that's with your agencies, your consultants, your attorneys, your social workers. Be careful with whom you work with. Ask their hours of availability, ask about holiday hours, ask about all these things, because people give birth all the time. Expectant moms reach out to you all the time. Birth moms reach out to you all the time.
Mhm.
You want to know that if you have a problem, somebody's going to be there to answer your call. My daughter was born on Christmas Day. I got a call on Christmas Day. I don't know why no one was available on Labor Day.
One will never know.
One will never know. Never,
One
ever,
will
ever
never
know.
know.
So thank you so much for coming back and watching another
Thank
one of my
you.
videos. Please press that like button. Please go ahead and subscribe. If you have any questions or comments for myself or MaryKate, please feel free to leave them in the comments below. She will answer any comments that you leave for her. I will answer any one that you leave for me. Please, again, go ahead and push that subscribe button. I will see you again next week. Take care. Bye-bye.
Hi, everybody.